Greetings and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on connecting DEI to AI, hosted by ALD and Associates, LLC. My name is Alfranda Durr. I go by Al to make it easy on everyone. And I'm the CEO of ALD and Associates and also your moderator for today's session. So before we begin, let me briefly tell you a little bit about who ALD and who we are and what we do. We are an organizational management consultancy specializing in policy development, training, strategic planning, change management, leader development, and of course, one of the topics we're talking about tonight, DEI. Today, we'll explore the intersection of DEI and AI through a DEI lens. And with me tonight, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to introduce our esteemed panelists, Tonya Bledsoe, Dr. Andrea Davis, and Nehemiah Thompson. And what I'd like to do at this point is yield the floor and give them each about a minute or so to just quickly introduce themselves.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tonya Bledsoe, and I am the founder of Let's BLM Consulting, and I'm excited to be here today with the rest of my esteemed panelists.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Andrea Davis, and I am the Chief Social Scientist and DEIA Specialist at ALD and Associates. Most of my work thus far has been in advancing DEI efforts within organizations, particularly within social-related organizations. So think of things like law enforcement, housing, places like that that have a direct impact on our communities. So I am excited to be able to have this conversation with everyone today because it's so much needed. AI is everywhere, and I'm looking forward to it.
Got it. Well, hi everyone. My name is Nehemiah Thompson. I am the founder and CEO of Start Lean, Finish Big. I am a consultant with a passion for helping businesses leverage the power of artificial intelligence to streamline their operations, drive growth, and stay competitive in today's fast-paced market. Here at our Start Lean, Finish Big, we specialize in providing tailored AI solutions that simplify complex processes, enhance decision-making, and ultimately help your business scale and grow efficiently. So I'm super excited to be a part of this esteemed panel and have this great conversation.
And thank you all very much. And on behalf of ALD and Associates, we really appreciate taking your time and lending your expertise as we delve into this topic. So first, as we thought about the topic for this evening, we really spent some time in looking at what are some of the things that are really moving and challenging our nation. So before we get into the complexities and also the opportunities and the challenges with this topic, I'd like to really take some time to set the stage. So in doing so, we all may have our own different perspectives and definitions for some of these terms, but for the purpose of this particular webinar, I would like to just kind of frame some of the definitions and key terms so that we're all working from the same framework. So when we think about diversity, we really think about how does that encompass the full spectrum of the human differences? And I wanted to expand on that beyond race, gender, and ethnicity, and really look at it as how does this influence age, disabilities, our socioeconomic statuses, our religious beliefs, political views, and any other ideologies that we may have that may be unique to us as individuals. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about equity. Right. And we think about equity, and oftentimes people may view equity and equality as synonymous or interchangeable, but they're not. And right. So we think about, for the purpose of this webinar, is equity refers to the fair treatment, access, and opportunities and advancement for all people. And it really involves an opportunity of identifying and eliminating barriers that have prevented some groups from fully participating, whether it be in a professional setting or a social setting. Next, we'll talk about inclusion. Now, inclusion ensures that people feel that they have a sense of belonging that are supported within their organizations, right? It means creating environments where any individual or group can view themselves as being welcomed, right? And we want to ensure that people feel that they're respected, supported, and they're valued. And then also it's about recognizing and valuing everyone's unique perspective and experiences. Now, the last definition, I promise, is artificial intelligence, as we will refer to as AI. And typically AI refers to computer systems and designs designed to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, right? This typically includes visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, language. As well, AI is increasingly applied across various sectors in terms of what we do and where we work. So those are the kind of the foundational definitions that we would like to start with on this evening. So again, I want to thank our panelists and thank all of you who are taking the time to be with us today to join us as we have this conversation. So as we begin, I want to just use this quick time for a disclaimer, right? Because I want to note that the opinions and the comments and the insights shared from our panelists are theirs, and they may not reflect ALD and Associates. I want to also share that I've prepared some questions to guide our conversation, because I truly believe that growth and awareness starts with this an open dialogue. We, as you will see during our session today, that we may not all agree with each other's perspectives, but there's an opportunity to begin the dialogue to build greater awareness and at least understanding. So I also want to ensure that our panelists have ample time and an opportunity to share their perspectives. So as a moderator, I may be kind of directly asking questions to certain panelists to ensure that their voices are heard. And we're not doing this in a vacuum. We also want to hear from you, those who are in our audience for tonight's session. If you have any questions, we ask that you utilize the chat feature to ask those questions. And as time permits, as we go through this process, we'll do what we can to hopefully address those questions, or hopefully during the course of the session, those questions will be answered. On another administrative note, before we jump in, some of you are very familiar with the YouTube channel on YouTube accessibility options. If you would like to take this moment now to turn on your closed caption option, we encourage you to do so, because we understand that people may learn and hear and retain information in different ways. So we'll give you a moment to do that. And with that being said, I'd like to start off with the first question. It's just a kind of an easy one to kind of get the conversation going. And I'd just like to ask our panelists if you could just share your thoughts on what comes to mind when you hear connecting DEI and AI. What comes to mind when you hear connecting DEI and AI?
Well, I think when connecting DEI and AI can be an invaluable tool for identifying and addressing, inequalities within an organization. So AI can analyze large data sets to uncover trends or even disparities that may not be immediately visible to the average eye, such as pay gaps, promotion rates, patterns of exclusion. It also helps in streamlining, the recruitment processes to ensure diverse candidate pools can be one of those things. And however, it's important that AI is used in a complementive way, not a replacement for human judgment and empathy in the realm of DEI work.
I totally agree with what Nehemiah just said. I think that when I consider sort of the overall topic of connecting DEI to AI and what does that really mean, what immediately comes to mind for me is just the incredible potential of AI to both challenge and to advance DEI efforts. And so on the one hand, AI has the potential to both detect and mitigate biases, kind of like what Nehemiah was saying. And on the other hand, it also has the potential, and you think about biases in data and algorithmic bias and that kind of thing, it has the ability to inadvertently perpetuate inequities and inequality. So I think for me, it is just so important as this technology and these systems are advancing every day to never forget that AI shouldn't just be seen as a technology issue. It should be seen as a human issue.
Agreed.
Yeah, I totally agree. with both Dr. Davis and Nehemiah. We find ourselves today in a really unique position to be at the forefront of the new AI technology and in the midst of the DEI conversation. And I feel like it is a way for us to actually have them both work symbiotically together in order for us to be, start out on the right foot. We can now utilize AI in the work that we're doing to help it to be have much more impact and a lot faster and in a lot larger meeting a much larger audience. I'm one of the things that I'm really looking forward to seeing is how we shift the conversation in education around AI, how it's going to actually change something, an industry that hasn't changed for about 20, or more years. I'm giving them, I know there's been some changes, but I think, that is one place where I can see that we can now reach and have the different ways that students learn. We can now utilize AI in that space to be able to have true differentiated learning, for instance. But we can also learn from our, the work that we've been doing in DEAI. We can now learn and implement that with the tools at the same time. And so I feel like we have a really unique opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And as I kind of process some of the responses, I heard a lot of information. Thank you all for that. When you really broadened it and talked about opportunities to leverage AI as it relates to pay gap situations, how people are promoted, how opportunities are presented, education, social economic status is looking at pay gaps. So when I think about that, I remember a lot of people use different analogies, and one of them that says AI is not here to replace people, but it will only replace the people who don't know how to leverage it. So when I think about that, it makes me think about my first question. How can, from your perspectives, how can AI be used to leverage or even to promote DEI within organizations?
I think when I think of that question, for the organizations that we have organizations in different levels of maturity of of doing DI, of implementing it, of it being a part of their framework or their the things they do daily. And I think AI can, with the data that has been already provided and created, AI can help to show patterns and trends, as Nehemiah mentioned earlier, to be able to help those organizations faster course correct anything that they're needing to, or see new trends that were their blind side. So I feel like AI can, really give you, because it can go through so much data and bring out information and trends that you did not see before. I think it really will help organizations to better implement and better utilize the tools in that toolbox for implementing DEAI. There I go. I just messed up the AI and the DEI. Okay.
It's a lot of acronyms.
A lot of
acronyms. And so I completely agree with what Tonya just said. And in terms of promoting DEI or advancing DEI specifically, one of the first things that I think about, or I guess my first maybe exposure to any type of AI technology, at least that I knew of, right, in the workforce, was AI software that was used to anonymize resumes. And I thought that was such an amazing tool for us to have in my office, because anonymizing resumes, just to be clear with the DEI connection, is really a promising practice within the DEI space to just help to remove any information from a resume that truly isn't pertinent to the person's ability to do their job. So things that may indicate their gender or what school they went to, because we know people have certain schools or type of school preferences, things like that. Being able to sort of do that automatically with AI software, rather than having to have someone from HR go through that very tedious process to anonymize a resume or a CV. I think that is really a profound application of AI being used to advance DEI. And so anything from that to using AI software to advance inclusive language on job announcements, or to, you know, to remove exclusive language, right? There's software now that does that in an incredible way. Words that we never really perceived as having, let's say, a gendered tone, AI has helped to identify, like, oh, hey, actually, you know, women perceive this word to mean a certain thing differently from how men perceive this word to mean on a job announcement. So now let's replace this word with something that is more just neutral, right? So let's be more inclusive on the announcement in and of itself. And like what Nehemiah was saying, identifying pay gaps, software that can do that, just the way we can use data to really do deep dives into that. And I also think a great way to incorporate or to use AI for DEI progress is to help to identify additional underrepresented groups that we may not always think of. I think when we go down the lane of underrepresented groups, particularly in our workforces, we all often think of EEO protected classes specifically. So think about your race, gender, color, you know, religion, and so on. But I think AI has the capability to help us identify other underrepresented groups that we may want to do a better job supporting in the workforce, perhaps even targeting, hiring, all of that, just a better identification and a broadening of the diversity dimensions. To go back to Elle's definitions at the beginning, the diversity dimensions that we think are important in the workplace. And again, just using AI as sort of a catalyst for that. So those are ways that immediately for me come to mind. And I'd say one last one is also using AI as an educational tool. You know, I think so much of what we talk about in DEI is misunderstood. And I think it can be difficult to sometimes bring that education to the masses. And AI, I believe, could be a powerful tool for educating our workforce members and helping folks to truly understand what DEI is and is not. So then they can be better on not only fostering an inclusive workplace, but then helping to audit these AI tools. So I think it's a cyclical kind of thing that I see AI performing on the education side of things.
Powerful stuff. I don't even know where to come. So I'm going to come from the business side of this whole thing. It allows businesses to create diverse data sets. More importantly is, how can I target different people in a more humane way, right? Instead of knowing that I've created a tool or a product and I had this potential market that I wanted to, but it allows you to create a diverse data set in order for you to reach a broader audience. Even in your design and your development teams, it creates more inclusivity because AI can help with showing you different perspectives on how you can aim and target different people, and also penetrate those blind spots that you may not be knowing. So AI can help enhance in those ways. Also with community engagement, it can, because you may not, as Dr. Davis said, is that you may not know how to speak to certain communities in the right way, but AI can help you pronounce things in certain manners and ways in order for you to have a more fostering and inclusive approach to your engagement with diverse communities. So those were just a couple of ones I wanted to hit on as far as from a business standpoint that can play a pivotal role in how DEI and AI can be conjoined in this manner.
And you know, as you all shared that, thank you for your insights, very insightful insights on that. And then, you know, I was thinking about, the systems themselves, and we think about AI. And I remember, as we looked at it, I remember the case of Wikipedia, and that was one of the newer sources. I'm aging myself, of course. When we looked at that, and we said, well, if it's on Wikipedia, it must be correct. So when we think about search engines and their ability to collect data to really inform AI, we think about it from a place that there's opportunities to perpetuate some isms and some different stereotypes, things that are typically kind of that reflect or amplify societal biases. There was a book written a while back called Algorithms of Oppression that really highlighted that. And in this race to promote AI, I think I need to ask the question, when you think about it from that perspective, what are the potential risks of AI perpetuating these types of biases?
I think the risk is quite great in that all of these models are trained on data that existed in our communities, that were part of the internet, everywhere. And we know in banking, in policing, there is a lot of data that already had biases within that data set. And this is the data set that we train these models on, and we're so in a hurry to get to market. Not all companies are actually taking a step back and ensuring that the data is actually, meets the standard of diversity and inclusion. And so the challenge is to, hold companies and integrators and, system implementers accountable for making sure they take the steps. One of the things I say is, in my experience as being a software implementer and doing AI consulting, the life cycle and the steps really haven't changed. You still need to have use cases, test cases. You still need to make sure you have experts. So the human part of this business is still relevant. And we still need to go through all of those steps to ensure that we are not perpetuating that bias within the systems. We have new systems that are using imagery to see if anyone is shoplifting, um, and using facial recognition. And we can't really, we know that data is biased. We have, folks, it can be as simple as sometimes you're trying to have systems that turn on and off based on the color of a skin or just based on a movement, and it doesn't recognize dark skin, or it doesn't recognize certain features. So we really have to be, I think, everyone thinks AI can take over, but I feel that that's until we as humans are the testing and ensuring.
And Tonya, we're having some Tonya, we're having some IT challenges. I'm gonna ask Dr. Davis to jump in, and then we'll come back once the system comes up. But thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Davis.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, you know what, Tonya actually spoke on nearly everything that I was going to say. As a DEI practitioner, I think there are a few different areas in particular that stand out for me that really alarm me, if you will, as it relates to what are the risks, what are the potential risks. And those areas are lack of representation, sort of the reinforcement of existing biases, and then also the lack of accountability and transparency within the AI space. And thinking about the reinforcement of existing biases, it's for me, it's exactly what Tonya said, and I think she was able to articulate that in a better way than I could, because she is an AI expert. But just thinking about the different ways that AI systems and models often rely on historical data to do what they do, right? And so if the data used to build those models has bias in it, then that's going to perpetuate further bias, right? And so I think about like if there was a hiring tool that was trained on data in a predominantly male field, then the AI tool, if it is even the AI hiring tool, may inadvertently favor male candidates because that is the way, you know, it was trained. And so for me, that's a kind of a core reinforcement of existing bias issue that I get scared about when you think about DEI and AI. Lack of representation, exactly what Tonya was saying. You know, the fact that in so many spaces, so many of our organizations and our companies and these folks who are developing AI systems and AI models may not represent the population at large, right? And so whether it is faulty recognition of darker skin or facial recognition, let's say, because primarily folks with lighter skin were developing the software, right? I often think about that when I am trying to wash my hands or dry my hands, sort of stick my hand under the thing, and then it's not going to recognize it. The water's not going to turn on if I'm this way, but it always turns on if I do it this way because it better recognizes the lighter side of my skin. Why? Do I think anyone was intentionally doing that? No. But we think about the lack of representation who was used to develop these models has now given an outcome, right, for the rest of us. And then for lack of accountability and transparency, you know, I think I hear the term, and I may be using this wrong again. I'm not the AI expert here, but the idea of sort of AI systems operating as black boxes and how that can make it difficult to really understand how it's making decisions, right? Of course, it's sort of this black hole of just whatever it is. And so that black hole or that black box can serve to obscure biases, but also make it challenging to hold people and companies accountable for reducing or getting rid of those biases because it is unclear how decisions are being made sometimes, or how the AI is making decisions specifically. And so when I think about that, you know, I know Tonya gave some great examples. I think also about like AI being used to, let's say, accept a loan application, accept or deny loan application. Do we really know exactly what went into that decision? Or would it be better to also have a human here who could help to really tease out what's going on here, this person's history and all of that? If we don't really know what goes into that decision or what went into that AI model, then again, that could be obscuring biases that are in the model. Another common one that I see in social service work is AI models being used to, or AI models identifying Black folks, particularly Black men, as higher risk within the criminal justice system. So when we see our criminal justice agencies and whatnot trying to incorporate AI in various ways as it relates to, you know, pre-sentencing reports and risk evaluation and all of that, why Black folks are automatically being labeled, you know, higher risk or more dangerous. What does that really mean? How did you get there, AI, right? Did you get there because, again, someone is a lack of representation or because of reinforcement of existing bias, and now it's hard to deal with because, again, this lack of transparency and accountability. So for me, those I'd say are the big areas that really concern me the most as a DEI practitioner, when I do see these amazing ways that AI can be used to advance DEI, but I think we've got to be extremely careful about digging down into these three areas to make sure we're not really perpetuating bias and other harmful ideologies.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit on all the points, but I'm going to talk on one specifically. I go back and think about that movie. If you ask me what the name of it was, I don't know, but it was the movie with Tom Cruise where it was precogs and AI was used in order to basically say that someone was going to commit a crime before it happens. And I'm leaning into that train of thought because I wanted to talk about unintended consequences. AI systems might inadvertently introduce new forms of bias or discriminations that were not present before, and we don't know, right? This can happen if AI is optimized for outcomes that overlook DEI considerations. So if those things aren't implemented correctly, you're going to have unintended consequences because your systems weren't trained properly, right? So if it's biased on historical data, it can create systematic inequalities. So a lot of those things could happen if, and run into a risk if you're not thinking about this portion of it coming into play when it comes to AI.
And I think the movie you're referencing, Nehemiah, is Minority Report.
Yes, that was it.
And thank you for that. And I wanted to make sure that Tanya, you had an opportunity to finish your thoughts. I thank you for coming back in, leaving, coming back in. But is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I think my esteemed panelists really wrapped up those thoughts that I had very nicely.
Well, thank you. And there's, as I listened to the conversation and comments, a couple of items or key talking points resonated with me. And, the first one we talked about, the unintended consequences, right? And we think about, race. I actually am perpetuating biases. Recently, I was creating a LinkedIn post, and I utilized a picture that was AI generated. Now, first and foremost, I utilized stock photos, and until recently, the majority of those stock photos were taken by photographers. And now, as I go and I look for these images, about 80% of them now seem to be AI generated. But as I went and I searched and I utilized the AI tool, I asked for a diverse working group, a representation. And I found that picture and I posted it. And the feedback that I received online was, it's interesting how you as a person of color utilized a photo that was not representative of the many different shades within our community. More importantly, they seem to have all passed the brown paper bag test. So for those who are not familiar with the brown paper bag test, there was a time in our history that they would grab a brown paper bag and hold it next to a person of color. If their complexion was lighter than the brown paper bag, then they had greater opportunities and were giving other opportunities. And if your complexion was darker than that, then they were giving jobs that were less appealing. But that was just one of my challenges in really trying to depict, because my intentions were good, but as Nehemiah said, unintended consequences, it didn't work out that way. And there was an opportunity for learning, for not only for myself, but for those who had an opportunity to go and check out that particular post. So I want to segue that into this next question. And I want to address it to Tonya and then Nehemiah. But what are some of the challenges that you faced when integrating AI into DEI strategies? And can you give us an example of how maybe you've overcome that?
Sure. I think one of the first is data. I recently, or actually just happened a few months ago, I was trying to help a client to bring in their data to be able to assist them with grant writing and, really help them to make sure their marketing would be really about them and not about, just random facts. And one of the issues and the challenges that we had was, you know, and this is interesting because I felt like it was the same challenges I had before AI with implementing systems, period. Is we really had not cleaned our data, had not spent time thinking about our data. We've been creating data. We've all been creating data with every artifact that we do, every conversation we have, every chat we do, every creation. But we're not really looking at at how that data is stored, maintained, and cleansed. And so what we realized was that when we would actually use the data that we did have that were created by um, employees in the company and consultants for that company, it really did not help us to hit our primary target. So we were creating some campaigns for our customers. That was the end goal, one of the end goals, and we were missing the mark on our campaigns. We were truly not speaking to the right audience for the products and services that they were trying to sell. So what we had to do was actually a very tedious exercise, but we had to go back and see why that was, and actually look at our core data, and actually had to pull out some data sets. We had to pull some things out. Which no one wants to do that, because you think you've been doing this for a while and you have the best data. It's your data. But we had to pull out that data set. We had to get a consultant to help with data analysis. I keep telling my child she should become a data scientist. It's going to be one of, really one of the big jobs. And it is currently already one of the big jobs. So, yeah, I believe in that scenario, one of the challenges that we have is the data. There are already implicit biases, as we mentioned earlier, in that data. And sometimes we have to stop. I know we want to go fast to get results, but sometimes we have to go slow, crawl, walk, and take a step back so that you can go faster.
Okay, thank you. Nehemiah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off of that, I literally went through this with a client yesterday, to where it's a chiropractic company, and we trained it with all the information that we thought a chiropractor would need, right? And it was all the knowledge transfer that he gave us. But when we were testing the bot and he was testing the bot, the information that was still coming back was underrepresented. So it's something that, as AI in the ChatGPT world and training chatbots and automation, there are still dilemmas in the type of output that it does for the end user. And that's why it's so important for you to have systems in place for training the data, because it's an ongoing thing. It's not something that's a one and done thing, right? It's going to constantly evolve and learn from you. But at the same time, when you're actually testing the data set, you need to make sure it is not biased in nature. And we were testing it in regards to those things. And so the information that it was putting out, because what we were trying to do is make it be 90% there without crossing the line of acting like a doctor, right? So you push it to that point to where you have to say, no, this is my AI assistant, but it knows the knowledge that you have. So the part that we were pushing it is using diversity in the areas, and it wasn't picking up on it. So we had to go back and train the AI assistant for the chiropractic firm in other manners, because it lacked representation for diverse groups. So even in that nature, just by being in it every single day and making sure that we're creating business automations, you still have to constantly train the data in order for it to not have biased representation.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Davis. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to add to that one? I know that it was more of an AI related, but welcome your thoughts as well.
I don't think I have anything additional to add to what was said. Just the importance, again, I think all of the examples that both Tonya and Nehemiah gave kind of represent some of those three categories that I was talking about earlier, and the potential risk of data, of perpetuating biases with AI. So I hearing it directly from practitioners, it's so interesting to hear the different ways that these things can manifest.
And I really appreciate those comments and looking at the data scientists and looking at how those bots are. But we understand that there's potential risk for an AI bot or AI system to further promote biases that really influence or impact the DEI effort. So if you could just kind of quickly elaborate on what can an organization do to mitigate those potential perpetuation of further biases?
Yeah, one of the things that an organization can do to help mitigate those things is, number one, collect data from diverse sources. You have to use a broad data collection and actively seek out and incorporate data from a wide range of sources, representations, whether it's demographics, region, experiences. You have to understand even the underrepresented groups, such as people of color, individuals, or disabilities. There's even certain communities other that are under marginalized communities. So you have to be inclusive when it comes to broad data collection. And then you also need to assess and mitigate bias in data collection. When you're doing it, you need to identify the different types of data sets that you're putting in. Where is it coming from? What are the sources? Where is this information being collected from? So you make sure that you have an ongoing dynamic data management system in place that refreshes the data sets to reflect current realizations and demographics as populations and societal norms change. So the data set be trained on a constant basis, right? So, and then you want to avoid any kind of stale data, right? Because data can go stale. And it needs to be regular revitalized, right? Just like your skin needs to be having the right things and creams on your face. It needs to be revitalized, right? You want to look youthful. So is your data set. It needs to be look youthful in what it's doing and the type of information it's putting out. And then you also need to make sure what DEI does so well is engage with diverse communities during your data collections, right? So communicate community collaboration, which allows you to gather those different data's collection to ensure that your experience and perspectives are accurately being representative and not behind the 8 ball. So those are a couple of things that can be done in order to refresh the data and make sure it's actively being pursued in a way that doesn't leave certain communities out.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Dr. Davis.
Yeah, so kind of looking at it from the other side of what can we do to mitigate some of that risk, I think it is of utmost importance to better educate the people who are working in these spaces on DEI. I think one of the things that we talk about in ALD all the time with our clients is building a DEI literacy. And I think so many people in our workforces and in our companies and organizations are operating from a DEIA illiterate capacity, or maybe even functionally illiterate, but they're not really equipped with the foundational knowledge and tools and mindset to really know what they need to know to be better at this, right? So to be better in this space and to be better users and developers of these AI tools and models. So I think one of the first steps is to, again, build that literacy amongst the folks who are on the front end of this kind of work, so that they're able to better identify underrepresentation issues, for example, or issues with, let's say, skin recognition, that kind of thing. They're able to see that more readily, more apparently, because their DEI literacy, they are DEI literate, or at least more so than perhaps before.
Okay, and I see that Tonya had to step away for a second. We're going to work on that technical difficulty and bring her back. But as I kind of process what you all have said, and I'm one of those note takers. People always tease me from a generational perspective. Why do you still carry a notebook with all the technology that's available? So I want to kind of expand on that, because Nehemiah, you had alluded to that people of diverse backgrounds have to participate. When I think about generational differences, I know that I'm okay with doing automatic bill pay online. However, I know another generation that does not feel comfortable and still writes checks, or still but want to go in person and deliver the cash to get credit. There's a lack of trust. There's a lack of understanding, and also there's a lack of fear. Where's my data going? So I wanted to frame that for this very next question, because I totally agree with you that it's important that if we want to have greater representation within AI systems, that we need to ensure that we can influence the data that is given or utilized. But I want to ask you all this question toward that goal. What steps can be taken to ensure that the data used to train AI it really represents that diverse representation?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing that needs to be done is auditing systems, right? To ensure that AI tools support, diversity, equity, and inclusion outcomes rather than hinder them. The organizations must implement robust auditing processes. These audits can help identify and correct bias that could negatively impact, different efforts going on. So one of the things in the goals and metrics is that you have to do is define the DEI objective. What is the objective overall with this auditing that you have to implement? And then how do you set measurable metrics to create specific measurable assessment when it comes to the impact of DEI? For example, metrics could include demographic diversity in hiring outcomes, equitable treatment in performance evaluations. That's an important one. Pay equity across different demographic groups. And these things are not seen by the blind eye a lot of times that we miss. But when you're implementing AI to showcase those goals and metrics, it can do tremendous things for DEI and the outcomes that we want from it. So one of the biggest things you could do is just conduct bias audit during your AI development and make sure that becomes part of your normal casting when it comes to the goals that you want to help for your company and or your business.
Okay.
Agreed. And I think also kind of going back to educating, the workforce on DEI sort of on the front end, I think it's important to make sure that various groups have access to AI and to technology and whatnot to even get sort of your basic exposure to some of this, because it's going to be more difficult to get representation within these AI spaces if there's differential exposure to AI and to technology and whatnot. And so the various inequities in our society that just exist, that are just there, kind of inherently perpetuate what we're seeing in AI. And so I think actually building, again, that exposure, those pipelines, really helping to drive more equity and opportunity, and that way can then affect what we're seeing in the outcomes with AI.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think we also have to make sure there's transparency in how we're going about doing the work. And we need the transparency with our EIA practices and within how we're building these systems. I think if we have more people and diverse teams come together to actually do the work and implement these systems, we'll get better outcomes. And so, along with what Nehemiah and Dr. Davis said, I think we made another key part of it is transparency.
Okay. Well, and I hear you. I hear the level of transparency and in the engagement. But I want to ask, if I can ask Dr. Davis to kind of take the lead on this question, and I would love to hear from Nehemiah and Tonya after her response. But what role should, we think about the human aspect of this. What role should human oversight play as we look at AI supported DEI initiatives, and what is the right balance? How do we strike that right balance in terms between the automation and the human decision making?
Oh, the right balance. I don't have the answer to that one. I think that might be the $1 million question, right? But I think, as I kind of noted at the beginning, I don't think we can see AI as just a technology issue. We have to see it as a human issue. And therefore, when we look at it as a human issue, human oversight is most certainly key, right? And I believe it was Nehemiah who said during his introduction that AI should complement, not replace humans. And I think human judgment, right? Human ethical decision making and all of that. It should be a complement. It should not be a replacement. And that is the space that I want, I guess, us to be in society as we go about using these advanced AI techniques and technologies. But another thing that is so important for me, and something that I don't see often enough as a DEI practitioner, is inviting DEI practitioners to the table in these AI spaces. I think a lot of times DEI work is seen as, not relevant perhaps to this type of thing, to AI, or even if not relevant, well, maybe it would be nice to have, but not necessary. It needs to be seen as necessary. DEI practitioners, DEI specialists need to have a seat at the table during all phases of AI to help with that auditing, right? To help with that oversight, to help with everything related to AI. And I'm not seeing enough of that now. And I'm not even seeing enough, in my opinion, conversation on that happening. I'm just not seeing DEI practitioners be involved in these spaces, whether companies are just not willing to put the dollars toward it because they don't see that it, again, like maybe it's not necessary in their opinion, or perhaps they might think it's a good idea if something goes wrong, right? Like if the facial recognition software is not identifying folks as the company may have wanted it to, okay, at that point bring on maybe a DEI practitioner. But no, it shouldn't be then. It should be proactive, not reactive.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I was going to, if Dr. Davis had not mentioned it, funding and money. I feel like with frameworks, governance, and having practitioners, we really, companies don't usually make that a centerpiece of the work that they're doing. And I think unless we have those things, we won't even come close to having balance. I don't think there'll ever be balance. And just like life, I don't always subscribe to balance. I think there's always waves, and you have to address issues as they come, and you have to change with the tide. But we should definitely know that the two must go hand in hand. You should not be in a meeting talking about this, thinking about this, knowing that you have a broad audience that you're going after, and not think about, okay, how do we make sure that we are implementing the right practices and guidance with ethics, um, and ensuring that we are utilizing these as tools. They're tools. There are teammates, they're tools. And yes, I'm going to actually, say that there will be jobs that are lost and things that we don't have to do because they're repetitive. But in the end, someone with experience still has to train that tool to be able to do those repetitive jobs. So there is still a human in charge, as I like to say, with all of these. So I don't know that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Tanya, you may have froze. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and one of the things that I heard that I just wrote down, like all three of you said, is the A word, audit, right? So when we think about audit, that's a great word to have, but I want to be a little bit more specific. So I want to ask the question: how can organizations audit their AI tools to identify and correct these biases that may influence DEI outcomes? So I want to get beyond like the awareness piece, but I want, if you could speak more specifically so those that are listening can maybe go back and, take some of these tools back to their particular workplace. So if I could start with Nehemiah, what are some of if you could just really speak about, like, specifically about audits and what they can do.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest things that audits can do, and from a strategy standpoint, they can conduct if you do regular bias testing and fairness audits throughout the AI development process, and this involves testing the AI's output to ensure that they are fair across different demographics groups. As the example I gave earlier about the chiropractic firm, we were testing it in different type of colorism, different natures, different peoples, different backgrounds, all those different types of things. And it's important you do those things when you're doing implementation. So you use tools and techniques like fairness metrics, bias detection algorithms, or scenario testings to identify and address biases before the AI is actually deployed and to be utilized. And that's why we do rigorous testing before we actually turn it over to our customer, and or have the customer do the rigorous testing before we actually release it to them and say this is a complete product. So this also helps with creating algorithmic transparency and explainability, right? So when you're using these tools and you have different stakeholders involved, it can help identify potential bias and understand how to correct them, and develop explainability metrics tools that provide clear insights into how AI models make decisions and makes the explanation accessible and not non-technical to the different types of people using it. So you need to set up review teams when it comes to implementing AI and making those different decisions. And that creates establishing multidisciplinary teams that include DEI experts and members of underrepresented groups to oversee AI development and deployment before it actually goes out. So there's all kind of different type of algorithmic situations you can do, human oversight that can be implemented into companies to make decision-making possible when about to deploy AI into your business.
Okay.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that sounds so good again to me as someone who's not like the AI practitioner. So the only thing that I have to not even add, because this speaks to something that you even mentioned, I would just say that I think the UX has to be much better. The user experience testing situation has to be much better with these AI tools. I'm using better as sort of a catch-all, but a lot more robust in all the ways that we think about DEI. I truly feel that needs to be better implemented. Just the consideration of UX and then what that looks like, to advance a DEI in various ways. But I do feel that, some of these marks were missed because there was a lack of inclusive UX going on when they were first implementing some of these models and whatnot. So that would be my add to what Nehemiah said.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And so Dr. Davis, since you continuously educate me with new terms and acronyms, you talked about UX, so I'm sure it's not a new term, but it's new to me, the user experience. So as we think about the next question, and I'll start with you, and then I'll ask Nehemiah, or have Nehemiah to share his thoughts. Can you kind of, I'd like for you to provide some positive examples how maybe AI applications that have positively influenced maybe some aspects of DEI.
Yeah, sure. Well, I will just mention the few that I talked about before, because again, I found those to be so meaningful in our workplace. Job or resume or CV anonymization AI, that has just really been crucial to helping to get more feet in the door, right, without that bias at that first level. And that's not saying that, bias cannot be perpetuated, let's say at the interview level or that kind of thing, but you reduce bias where you can, right? And so AI tools that have helped to reduce that workload of HR, which they're always overwhelmed, right? There's never enough people to do that kind of work. Having an AI tool that can actually do that work of anonymizing the resume before it goes to the hiring official, so the candidate can be just evaluated as fairly as possible from the paper perspective, I think has been powerful. That, along with the tools of evaluating inclusive language within vacancy announcements. Also, tools that have been used to look at pay gaps, to identify different ways that we can support folks of various abilities, right? I mean, I think it was through, if I'm remembering correctly, through certain AI models that we first realized the importance of having, let's say, lactation rooms in our buildings. It was an AI model that, that suggested that because of the varying way that the workforce was developing and evolving. Thinking about accessibility in terms of more than just physical space accessibility, thinking about the different ways that we can support folks who identify as, maybe on the neurodiverse perspective, or who are identified as neurodiverse individuals, being able to support them with the way perhaps training tools, education tools, other types of models, so where they are maybe assisted with writing, things like Grammarly, your favorite, stuff like that. I mean, I think these are so powerful in how they can assist. But yeah, we do know that, again, that is that sort of insidious underbelly of all of this as well. But I am heartened and encouraged when I see these different examples of AI being used to really, really support folks in our workforce and our society.
Thank you.
You touched on something that it hits home, almost brings a tear to my eye, because one of the biggest things that I was just I sucked at, right? I'm going to use that word, was my grammar. Oh my gosh. You try to get me to type out something where it would take somebody a minute just to pop up and type out and send an email. It would take me, I got to delete. I didn't say the, right, or would, where, whatever, right? Grammarly was like a godsend to me, because I had a tool using the power of technology and AI that helped me leverage and assist me in something that I knew was a big blocker for me. So even for people that are seeing or hearing impaired, there's so many applications, and Microsoft developed a great one that helps people with visual impairment, right? The app uses computer vision to describe the world around them, read the text out loud, and even recognize faces. That helps visually impaired individuals navigate their environment and assist in information gathering for them. So and I know that there was different departments that through my journey, I got to work with individuals. And when you're hovering over material or you're landing on a website and it reads the text back to you, and as you're moving your eyes or something, it's reading or giving you that information. So AI has created so much powerful gifts. I say gifts to so many different people, and even in our community in the DEI space. And so that's why the technology is important, because one of the things that hindered me is I can speak it all day, but if you ask me to write it, I was impaired, right? I just could not do it and I own that. But after, things and tools like Grammarly helped me understand, okay, is this what you were trying to say? And it knew me better and better and better. So now I can write content that is just fantastic for everyone. So it's important to me.
And I don't know if you all remember thinking about Grammarly and just some of those early tools that I know I was used to. Do you all remember the Dragon citation software?
Yeah. Yep.
So I have scoliosis, and sometimes it's difficult for me to sit for a long period of time because it affects my back and whatnot. So Dragon was back in the day. I don't know if it even exists anymore.
Yes.
It was such an excellent tool for, okay, I don't have to be sitting here at my desk. I can like have this mic on and just be dictating what I need to say into the Word document or whatever it was. And I found that I was so happy to find out that existed, right? And I know there are so many people in circumstances like that when we find these accessibility features of all types, but just these different ways that that AI can really support us in just living our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so with that said, from both of you, you know that you've slightly opened Pandora's box, even though I'm a Grammarly fan as well. But we see AI not only kind of manifesting itself not only within our professional work, but also in the education system. And when we think about how papers are written, what age are they using these particular AI resources, I think about, from an ethical standpoint. Let's take a moment to just ask this question. When we think about initiating or utilizing AI, what are some of the ethical considerations that should be taken into account? I mean, because at this point, you want to go to school, you encourage youth to go get their education, but how are they utilizing this tool? And what are some of the checks and balances there? So, and then also when advancing it, how do we make sure that it's fair and inclusive?
Yeah, I'm going to lean into, oh, wow, there's so much that question just brings up so much different stuff. But I think what it helps more than anything is it creates transparency, in making decisions in a way that were not transparent or understandable to the average user. So this lack of transparency can lead to mistrust, particularly among, marginalized communities and groups and schools, right? So when I know that the types of data that are being used in order to make, investments into schools is perpetuated by data. And if that data is biased, you can have marginalized schools or marginalized groups of people not get certain things based off of data, right? So what AI can do in this realm and with education, it can create the transparency and the explainability that the human would sometimes miss, or the lack of transparency that comes from the human element of making those types of decisions. So it creates a more of a balance just of accountability that goes into place when making those types of decisions.
I know when I think about this as someone who used to be an adjunct professor with colleges, initially think, maybe 10 years ago, even the primary concern was plagiarism, right? Okay, you run these essays or whatnot papers through the plagiarism checker. Now you got to run them through the plagiarism checker, the AI checker, everything. And so I think that is yet another concern for how the AI tools are being used by people, right? And so it's the AI itself and how it can perpetuate bias and stereotypes and all of that is one thing. But then I think how it's being used by the people is like another side of things. And when I think about differential access and how there are certain privileged groups who may have better access to different types of technology. For example, maybe certain folks may only have exposure to, let's just say, I'll just use one, Chat GPT, where maybe someone in a different socioeconomic status may know about Chat GPT, Perplexity, et cetera, et cetera. So they might be able to better, use AI to write their paper than someone who didn't have that same type of exposure. So that's also another DEI implication of AI, right? And thinking about how this is also just such a cyclical kind of thing. So yeah, that exposure to it, the ability to use it in different ways, and then also really thinking about, who is it benefiting in certain settings or not, right? Or who is it actually harming in certain settings? And in what way is there a disparate impact, while the actual policy itself, or while the AI itself, let's just say in the perfect world, the actual AI tool itself is absolutely fair and unbiased. Okay. But then if it has a disparate impact on people, or if folks are able to access it and use it differentially, then that's still a DEIA related implication that for me is of utmost concern.
And you know, you two hit on some, so I'm just going to respond, right? I'm just going to ask the question, because the things that both of you talked about were aligned with trust, doing harm. You talked about the many different systems in terms of access to these platforms or frameworks of, you know, you talked about perplexity and chat GBT, as well as Copilot is out there as well. So when I think about this, and I actually, and someone said, if you really want to know more about yourself, Google yourself. So I go into Google and I type in my name. Then I go into some of these other platforms that or systems that you mentioned, and it's almost right, but it's not right. Right? Maybe because my name Alfranda at the end, A is in Spanish is feminine, so it may describe me as a doctor based on what it knows. Right? I mean, I had a PhD and I was a woman. So I'm not going to actually always use that, but I want to ask, the question is, how do you build trust? What should organizations do to build trust while they're utilizing these tools?
Yeah, I think the biggest way you can build trust from an organizational standpoint is you're going to have to create a new department, and this department is implementing strong data governance. And that starts with, you know, AI business compliance, right? Are you meeting these standards that are coming in and being on top of this? So you're going to have a strong data governance department that's going to look at the data privacy and security and make sure that it's robust and the data collected is from a variety, not from a single lens, right? So it's going to help make informed consent and decisions on these types of things. And then you're going to have to create accountability and oversight. This is going to have to be the right people that's going to create the right framework, i.e. DEI, you know, practitioners, you know, that will help with the framework and the accountability that will outline the responsibilities, you know, that come into play when there are AI related decisions and actions that will need to come into place. Using DEI practitioners that will help with independent audits from an outside source coming in to look at these things and conduct regular independent audits, you know, on your AI system. So if you're implementing new AI systems, you need to have the right practitioners in there to make sure that it's functioning as intended and adhering to ethical standards. So what this does is like it fosters inclusivity, and it makes sure that your stakeholders are engaged on these things that are happening, because when you implement regular audits and data governance, it's going to help with, you know, any concerns and suggestions that may come to a risk, because a lot of AI is so new that there has not been government related fines in place because they can't think of all the nuances and things, but they will come. There will be foundational ones, and then there will be ones that are nuances that will slowly be implemented as big businesses start to implement more AI into their business and their everyday structure. So it's coming. So that's why adding that layer of data governance and having DEI practitioners a part of that system is very vital and important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the transparency aspect I believe is key as well, because with something like Nehemiah was saying, AI is still in the grand scheme of things so new, right? And things that are new and complex are often not trusted, right? The kind of the default for human behavior is to maybe be skeptical of it and to think maybe it's not like quite right for you, or there's something nefarious going on with this thing. So I think the extent to which organizations can really be transparent about what is going on with their AI initiatives will absolutely serve to just get to galvanize the support around AI holistically. you know, especially amongst groups that have historically been marginalized by advancements in general in our society, or just been marginalized in our society, period. Again, that transparency for me is key, and actually walking the walk, right? Not just talking the talk. I think that's something we see a lot in the DEI space. It's great to say all these words, but what are you actually doing? What are you actually doing? We need to see it. You need to show us, right? Not just tell us, actually show us. And so being authentic about where they are or where they aren't, even what some of the problems are. You know, one thing that I will always respect is, you know, what happened with Google years ago when YouTube videos were first being being uploaded and whatnot. And at first, there was, I think it was 10% of videos that were uploaded were always sideways. And so the Google staff was like, what's going on? Why are these videos sideways? Like, why is this happening sometime? Well, it was happening because the way they built the algorithm, and again, I may not be using the exact terminology correctly, but the way they built the system, it didn't incorporate left-handedness into that process. So folks who were uploading their videos from their phone with the left hand and whatnot, it was coming out sideways, the opposite way that it was coming out for folks, the majority of the population, again, who was right-handed. So apparently Google didn't have any left-handed folks on their team, or left-handed folks were not being thought of, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But they've done a great job coming out and saying, like, look, this is an example of something going wrong. You know, this was an implicit bias. This was lack of representation on our teams. But we have, of course, since fixed that. But it is a key example of when an unintended consequence, as Nehemiah said, that had a big effect on, you know, 10% of YouTube users. That's a lot of people, right? That's a lot. And even, you know, one or two is too many. But I think that transparency about what's going on well, what's going on not so well, and then just being very committed to actually walking the walk, for me, is the next step here.
Awesome. And Tonya, welcome back. I know that you had a storm in your area and the Wi-Fi is
Thank
not
you.
available, but we'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of building trust while implementing these AI processes.
We like to fail fast. You know, make sure that we try something and then we fail fast, and then, you know, course correct. So I think that I would add that to the conversation, is don't be afraid to try something and fail and then course correct.
And you know what resonated for me from that exchange was AI is quickly advancing without, it's almost like bowling without the, you know, the safety gutters when you're young. So there's no governance, there's no policies, there's no accountability, so to speak. So a lot of organizations are just running full speed ahead. I would call running down the hall with scissors, right? So when you think about that and you think about the evolution, I wanted to just really get your insights of where do you see the evolution of AI in the next 5 to 10 years? And more specifically, how do you think that will help us in our efforts for inclusivity?
I think, first of all, I don't know that I can answer that question, because at the speed of which things are changing, you know, in 1 year or year and a half now, we've seen so much advancement with generative AI. However, what I do feel is that having more conversations like the ones we're having today, and including more representation and just ensuring that we're in the room, will definitely help to bring about more meaningful symmetry with DEI and AI in the future. I feel we have an opportunity, like I said earlier, to really course correct, really, you know, make a difference, and to solve problems that we haven't been able to solve for a while. So I feel like if we're able to, you know, keep these conversations going, I would say I'm very optimistic about the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am too. I am too. And I think what I just don't want to see, to sort of answer the opposite of the inverse of your question now, is I don't want it to become an over reliance on AI to advance DEI. You know, I don't think that's the right way to go either. And I feel that the speed at which AI is growing and really becoming a central part of our lives, I see that as something that may happen. Especially with something that is in so many circles largely misunderstood, like DEI. I think it may become easy to just say, well, let's use AI to sort of deal with our DEI issues. And I don't want that over reliance to happen. So just being careful of that and remembering that, again, the humans are necessary, right? This is a complementary system that we should have with AI.
Yeah, and I'm excited about what AI can do and the expansion of accessibility tools and creating a more pronounced system that can incorporate and include a lot more people, whether it's speak recognition, language translation, assistance in technologies, or it just casts such a wide net that it can do that we couldn't do 5 years ago or 10 years ago because of where this advancement, just like Tanya said, it's what happened 6 months ago in AI is obsolete or where it's at 6 months later. It's happening that fast. And where it's at in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I can only imagine, right? And I think it's going to create a greater opportunity for collaboration and inclusivity, not only in the United States, but around the world. Because with the ability of AI that can cast a wider range of research so fast, so effective that we can get information back at a drop of a dime, versus what usually takes, months of iterations to actually collect this type of data. But so I think it also is going to create so many opportunities for even marginalized communities, because now there's this barrier that is removed, because when it came to coding, and I know me coming up with coding and developing websites and stuff, what you had to learn to code a website and do stuff, and where you are now with prompt engineering and stuff like that, it's about your speech. It's about what you say that can create such beautiful designs, graphics, so much stuff. So it creates so many opportunities for people if they choose to jump on it. So to me, it's exciting. It can help so many people become and just and it can control the wage gap if people jump on it. So I think specifically it's creating opportunities rather than creating gaps and or taking away jobs. You just have to jump on the bandwagon. So I see great things happen in the next 5 to 10 years with AI.
Awesome. So what I'd like to do at this point, I'm going to pause and take this opportunity to thank our esteemed panelists. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for allowing us to have the conversation and glean your knowledge and expertise. One thing that we do at ALD and Associates is we really want to focus on how do we create opportunities to begin to have these conversations and begin to grow through just engaging each other. So if you're interested in learning more about who we are and what we do, please take a moment to go to our website and you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation. Additionally, you'll find within the chat our links on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all the other social media platforms that we know, because I'm not as well versed in those areas, but we welcome the opportunity to connect with each and every one of you. And additionally, there will be a link sent out that will have a survey. We'd like to hear your feedback. We also would like to understand what are some of the other topics that you're interested in, that as we do our next opportunity for this webinar, that we want to make sure that we're providing you with the information that you're looking forward to hearing. So with that, I'm going to be prepared to close out, but I'd like to give our panelists one opportunity to kind of give one key takeaway that if you got nothing else from their thoughts today that they can share with you. So I'll start with Nehemiah. If you could just share one key takeaway that whatever our viewers heard, what is the one key takeaway you want them to remember?
The one key takeaway is continue the movement of understanding that there needs to be ethical AI deployment. If there's anything you've learned today, if anything that you can take away, is that ethical AI and considering the vast, not the slim, in this area. And when you're doing this and you're coming from your lens, don't single it out. Making sure that you're casting a wide web of people that can be a part of that collective on creating a great product or offering a great service. So anything that you're doing is important to make sure your organization is considering the impacts that you can make by incorporating ethical AI into your deployment and to your development.
Awesome.
I'm going to be a rule breaker, and I'm going to say two things. So, sorry. I am who I am. I'm standing in my truth here. One is always view AI as complementary to human judgment in decision making, ethical decision making in particular. Do not see it as a replacement. See it as a complement. And then two, involve DEI practitioners in your AI work from beginning to end, not just at the end. See DEI as a key component of your AI work and being proactive in your efforts to make sure that you are truly practicing, as Nehemiah said, ethical AI.
All right, great. And then I'd like to hear from Tonya, your key takeaway to share with our audience.
I think I would say I would like for everyone to make sure that they take away the fact that we are empowered to write this narrative of what AI is going to become within our community. We are empowered to ask questions, to hold people accountable, to request that they're transparent in how they're creating and creating these tools, and to be one of the first to try a tool, to actually lend your voice, be in the conversation. That would be my number one, I think, recommendation to everyone, is to be a part of the conversation, just like we've been done today.
All right. Well, thank you all again, my esteemed panelists. I look forward to future conversations. And what I like to share at this time is that we will head out with a repeat or a follow-on commercial. And also you should be receiving the links for the survey. Thank you all. On behalf of ALD and Associates, we wish you a great evening.